Free to play, the future model of gaming. Adam, would you like to fill us in on what this question entails?
Sure. On the surface, it seems like a simple question, but today we're going to be looking a little bit at it a little bit more closely. I'm sorry, my wording there was pretty awful. So traditionally, free-to-play games are typically programmed in something like Flash or JavaScript, something that can be made pretty quickly and easily, and you can be played in a browser and, pop it up and it's free. However, for a little bit more than the last decade, we've been seeing these evolve through small indie titles like League of Legends to blockbusters such as Fortnite, and culminating now in premium games that are being offered for free through services such as the Epic Game Store. Profitization has evolved as well from game advertising, such as something you might see in Angry Birds, where the game was free but it had advertising, and all the way through to microtransactions, to loot boxes, and now we're even seeing battle passes. So the real question we're asking today is, has or will free-to-play gaming become the dominant form of game distribution in the future, overtaking the traditional retail model?
I mean, with your definition, I totally agree with the question, and I mean, the idea of today's show is a fascinating one. The idea of this, like free to play, I mean, just giving our viewers and our listeners some background, this never quite existed to me until I moved to Taiwan. Even when I lived in Korea, I never got to see, the idea of free to play, even though I knew, like internet cafes existed and people went there to play StarCraft and paid money, for an hour or 2 hours to play StarCraft. I mean, this was more than 10 years ago. But in Taiwan, I have gotten to see free to play everywhere, and especially with Adam and I, being teachers, we get to see our students who sometimes we get to talk to about games, and they go out and they buy these things in Taiwan called like My Card or Gash, or they buy, lots of different options which allow them to spend money in games.
Yeah. Yeah, for a second there, I was like, you had never heard about this in Korea? Like, what? But then I was thinking, how long have we been in Taiwan? And I was like, no way. Korean's been in Taiwan, what, a year? You came a year after me, right?
I think 2 years because you're 14, right? I'm 12.
I'm 14. Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, because I remember when I came here, actually the iPhone didn't exist. So I was like, wait, games like Angry Birds and Bejeweled weren't a thing back then. So yeah, that makes sense. Because yeah, there weren't so many free-to-play games. I mean, they had games like what was it called? It was a browser game. It was an MMO. RuneScape.
Yes,
You had heard of RuneScape, right?
correct.
Okay, so that was one of the early, I think, free-to-play games, right? But
Was
anyway,
RuneScape free to play? Wasn't it like just like WoW? You pay per month?
I don't think you paid a subscription because I remember my brother played it when he was in, I think, middle school or high school. My youngest brother played it a bit, and I think it was free, but they maybe had in-game microtransactions. I'm not sure. I would have to ask my brother about that one. I never played it a bit, and I think it was free, but they maybe had in-game right there. But I don't think it was subscription-based. I think it was free. Or maybe it was a one-time fee, I'm not sure. But this is definitely a trend, and it's worth noting that it has grown in parallel with mobile gaming, because obviously when games came out for phones, like Angry Birds and stuff like that, a lot of them were free. So we've seen that kind of evolve alongside with mobile gaming. So, all right. So I guess you want me to go first then? Or?
Yes, please.
Okay, so I was very happy that you wrote your notes first so that I could specifically avoid some of the things that you were going to talk about, and then I would step on your feet. So I'll start with kind of the different free-to-play models because there are actually several different approaches to this. So the first one is it's free, kind of a free with model. So it's a free, but you have in-game advertisements. This is what we see in a lot of mobile games, especially now. You finish a level, you get an ad. You finish 3 levels, you get an ad. Oh no, you ran out of energy. You want more energy? Watch this ad. So a lot of games have that now. But the other ones, the bigger games, what we're seeing is either direct microtransactions, like what you have in League of Legends or Destiny, where you can buy some sort of in-game currency, and then you can use that in-game currency to buy exactly what you want. So I want this skin, or I want that weapon, or I want this cosmetic or whatever. So you can buy directly what you want, or kind of what we saw with Star Wars Battlefront 2 or Fortnite or Genshin Impact, or this kind of gacha system or the loot box system where you buy, some kind of loot box, and then that will turn into in-game goods, but you don't pay for it directly. It's more of a chance to get what you want. And I have feelings on that, but maybe I'll get into that a little bit later. The next form of it is the pay to win model. This is the one that most gamers absolutely despise and they hate it. There's basically two ways to do a pay to win model. You can do in-game boosts like what we see in Clash of Clans or Warframe, where in Warframe, if you want to build a weapon or something, it takes time, right? Like it could take hours or days for this thing to manufacture, correct?
3 days for a regular weapon and 5 to 7 days for like the really awesome stuff.
Yeah, so you have to wait 5 days, so you start building your thing and you have to wait 5 days before you can get it. Well, with these boosts, you can shorten that time considerably, can't you? Can you make it instant or just close?
You can make it instant if you play the in-game currency. No,
Yeah.
not in-game currency, the real money currency.
Yeah, so if you get the real money currency, then you can, boost yourself. You can make yourself much more powerful, much faster. And so technically it's not pay to win because somebody who doesn't pay real money could still become as powerful, but you're going to become much, much more powerful, much, much more quickly. And so that's going to give you a huge advantage until way much further down the line in the game's lifespan. And by the time that person catches up, there's a good chance that something else has come out that they're going to want, but you can have it instantly. And the other one is special items or gear, something like a game like Maple Story, where you could, buy a special sword or something like that. Or again, Warframe, where originally you could only buy primes, right?
No, no,
The
no.
only way to get them?
Even back in the day, I mean, I think I've told you, me and our friend Hans, we were the
Yep.
first like 500 people to start playing Warframe. However, Jesus, 8 years ago, maybe 8 years ago. And when the idea of primes first came out, they were all stuff you could earn. You could buy primes, but you could also earn them.
Oh, okay, so it's back to that in-game boost thing. You can instantly get your prime, or you can grind for it.
Yeah.
Now we're also seeing kind of battle passes like in Fortnite, where you pay this amount of money and you'll get a certain amount of in-game currency. You'll get access to special skins, that sort of thing. And then you have kind of free up to a point, like for instance, World of Warcraft or Final Fantasy 14, where Final Fantasy 14 now the original game and the first expansion are free, but you have to pay for the second expansion and the third expansion. So you can get up to level 6. You can play up to level 60 for free. And I mean, there's a lot you can do, but they do cut out some of the things like, for instance, you can't join a guild, you can't, or maybe you can't form a guild, you can't own player housing, you can't. You're limited to certain chat options, that sort of thing. So if you want the full game, you have to pay for it. And then also games as a service, which is what we're seeing now, like Game Pass, Stadia, Amazon Luna, where the game itself is free, but you pay for the service, and then you have access to all these games within it. They have the free to build brand loyalty, which is another form of advertising, like what the Epic Game Stores does, right? Where they're like, hey, you know what? We're going to offer this game for free. And the idea is to get you into their store and buying things, for example, if a game like Civilization was free on Epic Game Store, you're going to get it on Epic Game Store. You're not going to buy it on what do we call it, on Steam. And yeah, sure, you get the game for free, but now if you want all the expansions, you have to buy them from the Epic Game Store. You couldn't buy them on Steam, so now you're locked into the Epic Game Store for any content beyond that. And then now they have I'm going to call it the bait and hook method, but this is what the new game Maneater, where you play as a shark. I'm kind of tempted to make that one of my next streaming games just because it is free. So, people could pick it up for free right now it's on free on PS Plus.
Oh,
And what
okay,
happened
okay.
was this is why I call it the bait and hook, was they originally were going to release the game. They released the price and everything. And then they released it, I think, a week before January or something like that. And then in January, and sorry, I got the cat here. And then in January, they decided that it was going to be one of the free games for PS Plus. So what they did is they actually went out and they said, anybody who bought this game, we're going to refund you your money. So everybody gets their money back. This game is going to be free for everybody on PS Plus for January. And then it was released. And then maybe a week later, they came out and said, okay, DLC's coming. And so that, I think, is very similar to kind of the free up to a point with World of Warcraft and Final Fantasy 14. So I'm wondering if this is going to be a new model where the base game is offered for free, but you have to pay for DLC. So they want to hook you into it. And then once you're hooked into the game, make you pay for
But I mean, you
continuation.
think for I mean, people our age, uh, people older, maybe a little bit younger, a little bit older, how many people actually play DLC anymore?
I think, well, I mean, Witcher 3 sold tons of copies, and obviously the DLC did great. So there's definitely a
I
chance. And
mean,
then also, I
Witcher 3
mean,
sold copies, but DLC?
the DLC sold quite a few as well.
Quite a few. I mean, people bought it, but then it comes down to the fact I've bought a DLC maybe up until I was 35, 36, and then I gave up because I've never had time. Look at our
Really?
backlogs, right?
I buy DLC all the time, and a lot of times I'll even buy the deluxe edition of a game, which will come with the season's pass or the DLC or something, because I know I'm not going to get it to it right away, and then by the time I do get to it, the DLC has already come out, so then I can play kind of a full version of it.
Sure. I mean, but you're a completionist, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, how many completionists do you know? I mean, besides you, actually, I don't know anybody else who actually plays DLC. My older brothers tried to play Witcher 3 Blood and Wine and played about 20 hours and just doesn't have time. He's got too much other stuff to play.
All right, so we got a message from Ben here. It says, I only play DLC typically if I'm not playing a game as a new release, usually because I don't like to replay games much. So yeah, for instance, I played Fallout 4 on release, and I got the Season's Pass since I ended up playing all the DLC with the exception of the Nuka World, because that was the only one that hadn't released by the time I finished Fallout 4, and I've always intended to go back, but never gone back to do it. But yeah, so like what Ben's saying here is he will play DLC if that DLC is out by the time he plays it, but he won't buy DLC if it, once he finishes the game, he won't buy the DLC after the fact.
Okay. But I mean, how many people do you actually think, like like we just talked about this earlier, right? Like I say, these days as a middle-aged gamer and looking particularly middle-aged today with my beard, uh, that actually get up to the point of like playing 50 hours, 60 hours, and 60 hours is for me is like 2 months, maybe 3 months of gaming. And in that 3 months, now that I've got a Switch and a PC as well, X number of games have come out. How many people are like, okay, I'm going to finish this long game and then I'm going to play the DLC. But oh no, Story of Seasons, Pioneers Olive Town are out, or blah 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 is out on the Switch, or blah 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 is out, or Deathloop is coming out at the end of this month, next week. So I think my hypothesis is that after people who are busy, middle-aged gamers who are busy, got kids, got other stuff going on, actually probably even if they buy a game with DLC, they actually never actually play it.
I don't know if I would agree with that. I mean, I don't know. Obviously, I don't have kids, so that's a different thing. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, for instance, what your average gamer is, what, 35 years old right now, is what they say?
Yes.
And DLCs are a huge, huge, huge thing. I mean, nearly every game has DLCs, so they have to be profitable. So somebody has to be playing them. It can't all just be the young teenagers.
No. I agree, and I think it's people, late 20s and early 30s who play DLCs, and maybe people in their 50s, like people 10 years, 15 years older. They've sort of got past the busy point in their careers, and they're sort of like settled in their jobs, and they've got time.
Okay, well, what about a game like, for instance, when you were interviewing Antoine, right?
Yeah.
And he was talking about Civilization.
Yes.
And he was talking about in Civilization, he loved Civilization 5 so much, but he didn't realize that when he bought it with all the DLCs. And then when he got Civilization 6, he was kind of irritated that he didn't know that that 5, when he bought 5, it came with all the DLCs. And to get the full game, you would need to get all the DLCs. And he specifically said, now I know, don't buy it on release so you can get the full game with all the DLCs.
And I think that's like an example, because I mean, I've played all the Civs going back to the 80s, the original Civilization. And the Civilizations, to me, don't make much of a difference. You played one Civilization to another. I mean, the differences are purely minor. I don't think, like the Civ DLCs, I'll never buy them. And I've got.
Well, Civ 6, one of the DLCs added the, what do you call it? The diplomacy victory back in, which was not in the original base game. So you don't just get more civilizations. It does actually change the game.
You do add extra stuff. Yes. I mean, by the time, and again, I'm going back to that 50, 60 hour mark, you finish a game like Civ 6, you've already put 50, 60 hours in from start to finish anyway. And I feel like if you've got 400 Steam games and 50 Switch games and numerous board games on iPad, you're not going to be like, oh yes, I'm going to play this with some more DLC again.
And that's actually going to bring up a point I'm going to mention
We should
later.
be
But
talking about
we got
Ben's
another.
question.
Yeah, Ben has a question. He says, "Where do you guys place DLC on the evil microtransaction scale?" I actually have.
Oh, that's a good question. I'm curious about your answer.
I have a. I'm a morally gray person when it comes to microtransactions. So my policy in general is, if it's horse armor, it's not a great thing. But something like the Shivering Isles in Oblivion, or the Frozen Wilds in Horizon Zero Dawn, or Blood and Wine in The Witcher, I am perfectly okay with that, because it adds a significant chunk of the game. It's almost its own game on its own, right? And so I don't mind those. And actually, in games like League of Legends, where the game itself is free, but you can buy cosmetics and things like that, I actually don't mind that, because it's one of those things where you get the full game for free. But if you love the game and you're like, I want to stand out, I really like this character, I don't want to look like a generic version of this character, I want to kind of look a little bit special, you can buy that, because it's one of those things where I'm not the kind of, you don't need to pay any money. And I don't like loot boxes, because I do feel like loot boxes are gambling. So I am completely against loot boxes, but I am not against direct purchases of in-game cosmetics. If the game is free, if you're paying for the game, I'm not a fan. But if the game is free, I see that as a legitimate model, and I'm perfectly okay with that. And in terms of DLC, it depends on how much content there is, but also when it releases. So, for example, with Fallout 4, they came out with Fallout 4, and then they had the base building stuff, and then they thought, this is great, let's add some extra base building things, and they ended up adding 4 DLCs that added base building to it. That I'm okay with. In the case of a lot of games now, where the game releases and they start talking about DLC the day after it comes out, and it's kind of like, you guys specifically withheld stuff. I'm not for that. But again, like what they did with Maneater, if you're going to release the base game for free and then announce immediately, yes, there's DLC, so go ahead, play the base game, and if you like it, buy the DLC. I'm fine with that, actually, if they were like, we're going to give you a part of a game, because that's basically a demo. But it's a really, really big demo. That's like offering a demo for free and saying, if you enjoy the demo, buy the game. Except here it's, if you enjoy the game, buy the DLC and add more to it. So I'm actually okay with that model, because to me that seems like a demo model.
Okay.
So, yeah. But yeah, something like Horse Armor, or something like, what was it? I can't remember what game it was. There was a game that got a lot of flack recently because there was something that was supposed to be in the game and it was pulled from the game, and I don't remember, was it I feel like, I don't remember if it was like it was a big game, like a BioWare or a Bethesda game, but it was something that people found parts of the code in the base game for the DLC, and so it was apparent that they had already started building it, and then they pulled it out and then added in as DLC later, and I actually don't like that. So, yeah, I see DLC as a thank you to the fans. If it's kind of the thing, like, we made the game, it was great, you guys love it, you want more? Oh, sure, yeah, we'll give you more. And then they make more. I'm 100% behind that.
I'm gonna keep it simple. Like for me, I'll say 10, being when you're playing a typical mobile game, and you get adverts after every level. That is evil, horrible DLC. Oh, I should say, horrible microtransactions. 10 being supremely evil, and 0 being good. For me, DLC is like a 6 to 7 range. Like I said, I mean, Adam explained all the details of this. I don't need to say anything more than that. But I think, like I've already argued, I think when you're at a certain age in your life, I think, or just busy, DLC sounds nice, and you're gonna waste some money on it until you realize, like me, you'll never play DLC again.
Now, another thing
That was a
for
BR, I
you.
thought. Oh, Battle
Yeah, I was like,
Royale.
oh, maybe that was Fortnite or something like that, or a battle royale. Maybe, I don't know.
Uh,
But yeah, so how would you feel though about DLC? So let's say you are playing a game like The Witcher or something,
sure.
right? Or Valkyria Chronicles, which you need to play because it's one of the greatest games ever, and everybody needs to play Valkyria Chronicles. So go buy it right now if you don't have it, or
After you
next
told me
time it's
about
on
the
sale.
sad ending, I'm like,
No, it's not the ending. The ending's fine. It's things that happen in the middle. It's a war game. It's like Band of Brothers or
Oh God,
Saving
see,
Private
that's
Ryan.
I never watched that
It's
TV show.
well, it's that sort of thing. But let's say you play a game like, say, Witcher, right? And you buy the base game, you don't buy the DLC, and you finish it. So let's because you haven't finished The Witcher yet, right?
No, I played about 40 hours or 50 hours in, and then I got bored.
Okay. So, I mean, you're not a completionist like me, so maybe this might be different for you. But what do you think the odds are of somebody playing a game like Witcher, having a lot of fun with it, but playing it now, and then when they finish it, they're kind of like, oh, you know what? I kind of wish I had more. Oh, wait, there's a DLC? Oh, great. Like, do you think people do that sometimes? Because I would think they do.
And again, I mean, because I've had that exact thought. I'm like, oh my God, I love this game. I want to play more, and I've bought the DLC only to install the DLC, and later on find out, oh my God, blah blah is coming out tomorrow, or blah blah is coming out the next day, and then just never playing it. That and
I still do.
I feel like a lot of people are in that sort of age. I mean, like thinking of older people I know, thinking of younger people. Hans is a bit younger than us, like 3 or 4 years, and I think, what do you think about this, right? Is from the Taiwanese gamers you know, do you think DLC is a thing here?
Uh, e- okay, so yes and no. DLC in the sense of like when we think of DLC, like Blood and Wine on The Witcher, or Frozen Wilds, or Frozen Throne for Warcraft 3. I I mean, I think more and more people now are playing. I think games, in a sense, are becoming more globalized. So I think trends are kind of spreading everywhere. Asian trends are spreading westward. Westward trends are spreading eastward. Traditionally JRPGs here were really popular, and Western RPGs not so much. But I have so many kids that know of GTA. They know of The Witcher. They know of
Yes, yes.
Fallout. So I mean, um, so in that sense, I think, yeah, but I think DLC here is probably more in that microtransaction thing, because I know a lot of kids that'll play games like Rainbow Six Siege or Fortnite or that sort of thing, and they're spending money on, oh, there's this new weapon pack that came out.
True, true, true.
I'll pay money for that or something like that. So in that sense, I think I think Asia's more in the, and that's kind of the distinction. What is a a DLC is technically a micro. Well, actually, it's not a micro; it'd be a macro transaction, right? But yeah, I think that here microtransactions are more the way people lean, and I think in the West, people, microtransactions is a dirty word, and DLC is kind of the, not the more politically correct way to say it, but the way that people are a little more inclined to say it, though. Okay, so Ben says the answer for me was yes, but I was playing whatever the Game of the Year edition is called, so it was included, which is the picky reason why I played it. And that's exactly the same for me. When I bought The Witcher, I bought it late, so I got the Game of the Year edition, which came with all the DLC in it.
Me
So
too.
in a way, it didn't feel like DLC. It just felt like the complete package. You know what I mean? Like, you
Yes.
don't really realize you're moving out of main game territory and moving into DLC territory.
I just said yes, but actually I realized I don't know what you mean because I've never done that.
What do you mean?
Well, because I've never like played a game where I bought the Game of the Year edition and moved from the finishing part to the DLC.
Ah, okay. Yeah, and in The Witcher 3, if you do Blood and Wine, it's pretty obvious because there's a different zone. You've bought Horizon Zero Dawn. I'm pretty sure Frozen Wilds is
It is
included now.
included in the PC
Okay.
edition, yes.
And because Frozen Wilds was built later and it has a different zone, it's basically the only area in Horizon Zero Dawn where you're going to go into a loading screen to load a new area.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, basically you climb a mountain and then it loads into a new area. So it's the only area, so it'll be kind of obvious when you're moving in and out. But the thing is I think they recommend for Horizon Zero Dawn, don't start it until level 30. But then once you go to level 30, you could theoretically go back and forth between it and the main game because they kind of happen in parallel. Ben's in his 90th hour of Cyberpunk, and he's really
I know he was
unlikely to
80
play whatever
hours when
DLC
he
happens.
messaged me.
Wow. That's actually going to be. I'm going to go into some math in a little bit, and that's actually something that is an interesting point that he points out there, because that is going to come up. How many hours people put into games? So
Sure. Yeah, I mean, continue with your points as I'm looking at your notes because I sidetracked us a bit.
we did a little bit. So I've noticed that mostly free-to-play games are predominantly, at least in my opinion, have been predominantly been multiplayer. I mean, do you agree with that assessment, or?
Free-to-play games, multiplayer. When I think back, I mean, again, with my only last decade of experience, yes, I totally agree with that.
Yeah, so I think there's kind of an element of let's get a lot of people in and kind of get this. And I think that's part of the reason is if you had a single player game, like something like, say, Witcher, and I offer armor to make Geralt look distinct, who cares? I'm the only one seeing Geralt, right?
Sure.
But I think in a multiplayer game like PUBG or something like that, you don't want to look like everybody else. You want to look distinct. You want to stick out. And so I think there's kind of more of a, in a way, demand for multiplayer games to have these kind of microtransactions and that sort of thing. And then I think also because multiplayer, like, a game like The Witcher, you play it, you're done, fine, move on. But a multiplayer game kind of survives on its lifespan, right? It needs to be relevant for an extended period of time. So I think they need that constant influx of cash and to keep it going. And in that sense, I think a lot of them are kind of going with that League of Legends model where they're like, let's release the game for free, but we'll come out with, new skins and seasonal content and that sort of thing. And people can pay for some of these extras, along the way. And that's going to keep it kind of viable for a longer period of time. So I definitely think we're going to see a lot more multiplayer free-to-play games in the future. I think for multiplayer, that is kind of the direction that they're going to be moving in. But for single-player games, something like Genshin Impact, I would probably say free-to-play might be the exception still. But what about services like Xbox Gold, or not Xbox Gold, but Game Pass and that sort of thing? I mean, obviously they're going to be offering games for free. You're paying for the service, but you're getting the games for free. So what do you think about things like that?
Game Pass. I think I don't know if I had this conversation with you or with somebody else, but like I'm a big fan of Game Pass. I actually might transition my PC game purchases to Game Pass this year, depending on Deathloop. If you haven't watched that, that is a game that I'm really interested in. One of the probably handful of games I will actually purchase this year. And especially now that Bethesda is owned by Microsoft, that I might just literally never buy another game again and just pay for Game Pass this year, which I was a Game Pass member for like 6 months in Taiwan. And it was ridiculously cheap. I mean, it's like Netflix. I pay Netflix for me, my partner, my mom, and my younger brother, and I mean that is 400 Taiwanese dollars, and divided by 4 people, that's nothing.
Mm.
And so Game Pass as well, I go for the middle subscription, which is like $10 a month or 300 Taiwanese dollars, and I get to play games for, I mean, there's tons of games, and Microsoft's been really, really good towards the end of Game Pass last year, where if there's a new game coming out, they'll be like, yeah, we're gonna try and get this. I mean, they got Red Dead Redemption 2 months after it was out. I think, and Game Pass, I think, is going to be the thing that most middle-aged gamers subscribe to moving forward, despite, EA having their little Game Pass thing. And oh, sorry, EA Pass is included in Game Pass now, as well
Is
as
it
uh,
EA exclusives or something? What's it called?
it's called like EA Pass, or EA Origins, something like that.
Okay.
So, I mean, you've got EA's total. I think Ubisoft is also included as well, if I'm not mistaken. And so you've got all these games plus access to the other stuff, and I mean that just makes it superior value.
So I mean, recently in the news, I saw you tweeted about it, the Xbox Gold doubling in price, and then they immediately redacted that, but or not redacted that, but went back on it. Well, now a lot of people I saw were theorizing that this was kind of a move by
Yes,
Microsoft
yes.
to force people into Game Pass to phase out Xbox Gold eventually. I mean, do you kind of agree with that was kind of what they were doing, or?
Oh yeah, yeah. I'm sure the CEO of Microsoft is notoriously in the last, since he took over, he was like, this is the thing that's gonna work. We gotta find a way to push people that way.
Phil Spencer?
Is it is Phil Spencer? It's not the CEO of Microsoft. What
No, he's
happened?
not the CEO. He's the head of Xbox.
Oh no, 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 no. I think it's the CEO of Microsoft.
Ah, okay.
I always forget he's an Indian guy. Ah, Satya Nadella. Yes.
Oh, okay. No, that's definitely not Phil
So he
Spencer.
he's the guy, and apparently I think he's had a book that's out, and people have been talking about his strategy for Microsoft Cloud Services, Azure, and as well as the overall strategy for Xbox and Game Pass and games as a service model, and Microsoft switching to like a services model. So I think that is his direction, passing down to Phil Spencer, saying, "Hey, this is where we're going," uh, and I think that's what they're gonna do.
Okay. Yeah, that was definitely an interesting thing from my perspective as a PlayStation guy was seeing that because in a way it was very reminiscent of when the PS4 and the Xbox One released, and then they said Connect is bundled into it. We can't disconnect it. It has to be in there, and all these other and you have to do the online authentication every so often, or else your games will get locked out. And then people complained, and they immediately took a step back. And it seems that Microsoft kind of does this, where they push an extreme to test the waters, and then it doesn't work, and then they immediately pull it back. So that seems to be kind of a business strategy that they're doing there. Ben says that was less of a step back and more of a warning. The price hike is going to happen in the next 6 months, or I'll eat my hat. I I don't know if they're going to do the price hike. I think they're going to end at Xbox Gold, because now they even said, what, you can play games for free? Yes, Jinx. Because now they immediately said, not only are we going to put Xbox Gold back at its original price, but we're also going to make it that games no longer require it for online play. So I think they're going to phase out Xbox Gold and make Game Pass basically the only thing. So I don't know if they're going to, yeah. So I don't know if they're going to try to jack up Xbox and get people over, or if they're just going to say we're dropping it all together, and if you want this, you need Game Pass. So, but yeah, so I did a little bit of research, and things like Game Pass, which I mean they're not really free to play, but doing a little bit of research, this is kind of interesting. It said so Game Pass costs $120 a year. Your average game in the US, let's say it costs about $60. PlayStation recently boosted their prices up to $70. A lot of people are saying that's not viable, which is kind of a funny thing, because the game industry has been saying for a while that given the costs of creating games, that prices need to go up, but they haven't since the 90s or something like that. But anyway, if you do Game Pass, if you paid for Game Pass on average, if you played one game a year, you're paying $120 for one game. If you play 2 games a year, you're paying $60 per game. 3 games a year, 40. If you're playing 10 games a year, you're paying $12 per game, right? So to put that into a little bit of perspective, and I'm going to use The Witcher 3 here, which was a huge game. There's obviously smaller games that this would change with, but The Witcher 3, it cost $81 million to make. It sold 28.3 million copies. So if we're assuming that your average buyer bought that game half off, so some people bought it full price, some people bought it 25% off, whatever. If we're assuming that your average buyer bought it at half off at $30, then they made $849 million off the game. And for the publisher, which gets about 50%, that's about $425 million. Okay. So, and it's been 67 months since release. So if Game Pass, if Microsoft said for Game Pass, we'll we'll keep half of the money and the other half we'll give to whatever games we'll divvy it up among the other games, you know. So we're saying if you played exclusively Witcher 3 for a month and they ended up getting $5 from Game Pass, which they're not going to do. It's going to be way less than that. But if they got $5 from Game Pass per month, your average gamer would have to play exclusively The Witcher 3 for 3 months in order for them to make the same amount of profit they made by not releasing the game on something like Game Pass. So to me, it just doesn't seem very profitable to third parties to join something like Game Pass. So I'm kind of wondering how it's going to work, right? I looked it up. It says your average gamer spends about, I dropped it now. But it says your average gamer spends about $214 a year on games, and Game Pass is $120. So for instance, for you, I mean, do you have any idea how much you spent on games last year? Or?
I probably have a pretty good idea. I mean, including Switch games. And again, I've spent money in these games. I've played 20% of them. Probably, I mean, US dollars, at least 1,000.
At least $1,000, right?
Yeah.
So if you're switching to Game Pass, that's $880 pulled out of the market, gone.
Sure.
And if a lot of gamers are doing this, that just means the gaming industry as a whole is making far, far, far less money. I mean, so is this really a viable...
That's an assumption, though, that Microsoft is paying the developers less.
No. I'm not even saying that. I'm saying if you... Okay, so if you pay 1,000, your average player pays 200 and something, right? So if your average player pays 200 and something now, if they switch to Game Pass, they're only paying 120. The entire industry as a whole would make half as much money as the entire industry does now. So there's half as much money floating around
but
in
there. The assumption that Microsoft is not paying is not paying the full 50% or even 75%. And I think the advantage of Game Pass is that it does get out to more people. So if Microsoft is paying, let's say they're paying half the price of the game, and they can afford to do so, just like Netflix can afford to pay people to make content for them, because I mean they're borrowing tons. They've got people. I've been filing. Netflix is at 200 million users, as of this month's news. So I mean the point is Microsoft is to dig into their billions of dollars in cash, just like Apple. Pay the money now for reap the benefit later when they hit the 200 million mark for Game Pass subscribers, and then slowly increase the money, just like Netflix has been doing.
But in the case of Netflix, that's why Disney created their own streaming service, because they were actually making less money off of Netflix than they had been traditionally making off of theaters. So they had to create their own service to compensate. And then they put all their own content
revenue
on
with Netflix.
Exactly. But that's what I'm saying is if you have, let's say you have 1,000 gamers, right?
Yeah.
And 1,000 gamers on average are spending $200. So that's $200,000 a year between these 1,000 gamers, right?
Okay.
Spread out over everything that they're playing. If those 1,000 gamers went to Game Pass, now there's only $120,000 being made total. So there's less money,
but again, that's
to be divvied out.
Assuming that the game doesn't get more than those 1,000 gamers.
But do you think something like Game Pass is going to attract non-gamers to become gamers and buy it?
What I'm saying is that I, as a Game Pass user, would never play Final Fantasy, right? But I'm like, oh, okay. And especially for people like me who are not completionists, like, oh my God, Final Fantasy's there. Oh, I'm kind of bored with playing. Jesus Christ. I'm bored of playing Cyberpunk, which is not going to happen anytime soon, but I'm bored of playing Cyberpunk. Okay, Final Fantasy there, I'm going to give it a go. Oh, I feel like playing an RPG. I feel like playing a JRPG. And I think that is the success of Game Pass, is that it's going to allow me to try more stuff, because I'm not having to make the decision of committing my $60 or $50, or having to wait for a Steam sale or an Epic Store sale or something like that. Is that I can go and give this game and give it a try. And when I download it, Microsoft is paying. Final Fantasy is made by Square Enix, right?
Square Enix, yeah.
Oh, God, Jesus. Yes, so, yes, they're paying Square Enix, the 50% or whatever their fixed fee is, just because I downloaded and gave it a try.
Okay, but here's what I'm saying. If you buy Cyberpunk for $60, right?
Yes.
So you buy Cyberpunk for $60, and then you buy uh, I don't know what's coming, and then you buy Deathloop for $60.
Sure.
Okay, so you buy these two games. You spent $120, and you bought two games,
Yes.
right? So each game gets $60. Now, if you buy Game Pass, you spend $120. So you're spending the same amount of money, but now you play Cyberpunk, you play Deathloop, and you play Final Fantasy VII Remake or something like that, right?
Sure, sure, sure.
So now your $120 is being divided among three games. So before, the two games were $60 each. We're making, CD Projekt Red was getting $60 from Cyberpunk or whatever, and whoever makes Deathloop is getting $60 from Deathloop. But now, because Final Fantasy is in the mix, you're still paying $120. Now CD Projekt Red only gets $40, and Square Enix gets $40, and Deathloop gets $40. So it benefited Square Enix in a way, but it hurt the other two companies to do that.
I mean,
And for somebody like me who's
Yes.
playing Final Fantasy, maybe I would give Deathloop a try, but now they're making less money off of me. So basically, it's there's less money in the system. You know what I mean? Like, because now that instead of that money being divided over two games, it's being divided over three.
I mean,
And
but that is
yeah.
based on the theory that the population of Game Pass doesn't try other stuff. I mean, it's when you put your game on Game Pass, your access to the 20, 30 million people who pay for Game Pass, and that's the advantage. Is that all these people could potentially pay games, and you have a stream of people who download your game and you get paid, as opposed to somebody who buys your game one time and you get paid that much.
Yeah.
And I mean, and forever when your game's on Game Pass, you're getting that money.
And I think Ben's right here. He says, I think that it's rare that Game Pass includes new releases, games at the full $60 USD price tag, though. So the developers are getting paid per license, and the games are paying $120 a year to pay, $19 games usually. And I think that's for me, like where Netflix would make sense, because if you have an old show like, say, The Office, which isn't selling DVDs so much anymore, this is something that doesn't have any overhead. You're taking a game that maybe, Witcher 3 is still selling great, but I don't think Horizon Zero Dawn selling all that many copies today, that what it was back in 16, 15, or whenever it released, right? Nier Automata isn't selling the copies that it used to, right? So putting something like that on Game Pass, because there's almost no overhead, right? It's just digital, right? You don't need to have it on stock, or you don't need to manufacture more or something like that. So for older games, I think it makes a lot of sense because this is a way to make money on that sort of thing. But yeah, I'm just saying, like, for example, yeah, maybe you're playing more games, but that's just it. You're paying more games, but you're paying the same price. Or you're playing more games, but you're paying the same price. If I'm playing more, but paying the same, that means everybody with their finger in the pie gets a little bit less of the pie.
That's again, it's just based on the actual single person. It's not based on the fact that everybody is playing more, so the developer's getting paid per person.
But I'm saying, is it like right now, if there are, let's say, I don't know, 7 billion people in the world, let's say like 1 in 7 people play games. I don't know what it is. Let's say there's 1 billion players. Do you think we're going to attract another 1 billion? Do you think
I
people
don't think
who are not gamers are going to say, hey, let me become a gamer and join Game Pass?
No, I don't think it's about attraction. It's about the fact that 500,000 people play Final Fantasy, right? Or bought Final Fantasy. But in Xbox Game Pass, those 500,000 people are going to play Final Fantasy, and the other, Xbox Game Pass, 30 million people, another 500,000 people like, wow, I've always wanted to play this. They're going to play it, and they're going to make up for the lost money.
But the thing is like but then Final Fantasy, if it sells, if you have 500 million people buying it at $60 or $30, right? And then on Game Pass, people are playing it, right? And they're say getting 50% of the profit, $5 per month. To get that $30, those people would have to play only Final Fantasy for 6 months.
But see, I don't
to make that same profit. Or if you had double the number of people playing,
50% of the actual sales price.
I don't think they're getting nearly that much.
I think they are, because I mean it is. I mean it's that's the only way to get somebody on board, and I think Microsoft is paying huge amounts of money for that.
Yeah, I just don't think the math adds up though.
I mean, but I mean, it is what a loss-making business is. It is what Netflix is. Netflix is a loss-making business, and that's what you need to grow in from 2015. To this kind of subscription model. Same with Disney Plus. Disney Plus, those Marvel shows, they cost hundreds of millions of dollars to make. Disney's not making any money, but they're doing it to grow Disney Plus. Just like
Okay, so but
Netflix is not making money. Netflix has been losing. Netflix borrowed $2 billion at the start of January.
right, right.
Yeah.
Okay, so Ben says if Microsoft sells Office for $100 at Best Buy to one user or sells bulk licenses of it to schools and offices for $25 per user, are they really losing money or are they building a customer base by bulk sale? And in that case, yes, they're making money from bulk sales. But the thing is that's only one product, right? Like, okay, let's say you make a game, right? And I make a game and Ben makes a game,
Okay.
right? And each of our games gets, say, 100 players, okay?
Okay.
So we're each getting $6,000 if each game is selling for $100, right? So you get 6,000, I get 6,000, Ben gets 6,000. Each of our games makes a roughly 6,000, okay? Now, if you have something like Game Pass and you take those 3,000 players, right, and they all buy Game Pass, so what would be 3 times... what would be 3 times? So in total, we're making 18,000. No, yeah, we're making $18,000 between the three of us, right?
Okay.
So I get 6, you get 6, he gets 6. That's 18,000,
Sure.
right? If those 3,000 are paying 120 each, so that would be, I mean that's basically the equivalent. Or let's say that's assuming that each one of them only buys one game a
Okay.
year,
Okay.
right? So let's say each person buys, there are 3,000 people, each one buys 2 games a year, right?
Okay.
So I get 200 players, you get 200 players, Ben gets 200 players. There's a mix there, right? Okay. So I'm making 12,000, you're making 12,000, he's making $12,000,
Sure.
right? If those people, so that's a total of $36,000. If those 12 people, or if those 3,000 people paid for the Game Pass, that's also 120. That's still $36,000 total between the three of us, right?
Okay.
So maybe that'll encourage people to pay for more, right?
Okay.
But if those 3,000 people each played a 4th game or a 3rd game, suddenly our profits start going down.
Sure.
So every game you add to the mix, the profits go down per developer
Sure. Sure. Sure.
because there's more fingers in the pie. That's what I'm saying.
I mean, that's the thing. If you're starting a subscription service on a small scale, it's not going to work. But when you add tens of millions of people, it it is an incentive to join Game Pass.
I'm going to venture a totally uneducated guess here and say that Microsoft is probably passing the developer a preset negotiated price based on potential or known popularity of our games versus the power. So,
Yeah.
actually, Phil Spencer came out and did say that. He said that they are kind of like a Netflix model and they do different things. Sometimes they give them he says if they are the developer, or sorry, if they're the publisher, there's a couple ways to do it. One way is just they give them a set fee, but the developer gets no royalties or anything like that. So, yeah. So if they do that, and then so very rarely, so they usually get a flat fee. They don't usually get this sort of thing. But basically, like what I was saying with the math, if you do the math for your average Witcher player to generate the same, the enough play time to generate the same amount of money on Game Pass, your average player would have to play for about 3 months, just Witcher and nothing else, to make Witcher the same amount of profits on Game Pass that it made on game sales. Which means that on average, you can only play 4 games a year. I mean, how many games a year do you play?
I mean, me less and less. So I mean, I can see myself playing 4 games a year.
Only 4?
Yeah. I mean, it's the end of January. I've only put in 10 hours into Cyberpunk, and I bought that last year.
Well, you've also played Hearthstone.
But Hearthstone is a multiplayer game, and I don't pay money for that.
Yeah.
I'd say
No.
games that I actually have paid money for. Yeah, I can easily see myself this year just playing 4 games.
Oh, okay. No, I definitely would. I'm definitely going to play way more than
I
four.
want to play more. Don't get me wrong, but I
As you've been
mean,
here, those are rookie numbers. No, I looked it up. It says your average gamer puts in about 6 hours a week. So,
and
um,
again, the average gamer is what is the age group of that? I don't think.
that's every age. Every age. If you took every gamer and you added up all the hours they play on average, any given gamer is going to play on average 6. So some people are playing 15, other people are playing 2, other people are playing 1.
Okay,
But the
okay,
average
okay.
amount of time for a
I agree
person
with
is
that
about
then.
6 hours a
Yes,
week.
yes, yes.
So, like if you're using that, it would take if you're using that, your average gamer to generate enough profits for Witcher 3 to pay off on Game Pass, if they're making 50% of the Game Pass subscription, so $5 off, if Microsoft's giving them $5 per month, right? It would take your average player about 77 hours to generate enough money per month to reach the same profits that they've made now. Average Witcher play time is 70 hours, so
I mean,
you're
that's
losing about
based on the subscription
10% of your
fee,
profit.
which I
Right, right,
think
right.
is if they're not paying that, I think that's impossible.
Right. And I mean, and Ben's right. I mean, in a way, Witcher 3 is still doing quite well. It's kind of an exception. Um, but yeah, if you're playing like older games, if you're putting older games on there that aren't generating sales anymore, right? Like if you're putting, say, Halo Master Chief Collection or something like that. I mean, that game came out how many years ago? I don't think they sell too many copies anymore. So that game's just sitting on a shelf collecting dust, right? You might as well put it
Sure,
out there.
sure.
Right. So yeah, it's I mean, I'm not a business guy, so maybe I'm not looking at the math the right way. But yeah, to me it doesn't add up. I don't really get it. But
I mean, to me, it makes absolute sense. I mean, you look at the rise of subscription services and loads of people like the idea of subscription boxes before the idea of subscription services, and it makes sense. It's building a dedicated user base. Even if you lose money now, you're going to be gaining money in the future.
right, because I'm just looking at stuff like Netflix, and I mean, Disney, like I said, Disney was making their own movies. They had the Marvel movies and stuff on Netflix, and Disney took them off and created their own subscription service because it wasn't profitable for them to put it on Netflix. And it was, so to make it profitable, they had to make their own first party thing. And so for me, something like Game Pass is like, is that going to be, it's definitely going to benefit Microsoft. It definitely works out for them, right?
Not now at the
But,
moment, but I think in the
well,
future, when they hit the
right.
right
But
numbers.
Right, but I mean, are we going to start seeing the same thing that we're seeing with with movie streaming? I mean, now we have Netflix, Hulu, Apple. Was it the Peacock or whatever CBS has that they took The Office off of Netflix because it's more profitable for them to make their own thing, right? Now we have Amazon Prime, right? So, I mean, are we going to start seeing this where everybody, Square Enix is going to have their own streaming service, and then Ubisoft is going to, pull out of Amazon Luna and create their own streaming service because they find out it's not more profitable to join somebody else's streaming service. It's more profitable to have your own because if you're joining somebody else's, you're actually losing a bit of money.
I mean, I think moving forward, I mean, it's unlikely. You look at Steam. Steam's still dominant in the marketplace. Epic's only managed to catch up because of those deep 10-cent pockets. Uh, and that's Epic. Look at Green Man Games or GOG, Humble Bundle Store. I mean, those guys are still lagging way, 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 way behind. And I think as far as streaming service or like the idea of Xbox Game Pass, Microsoft's done so well with it and organized in such a nice way and set such a low bar, $10 a month. Nobody's going to be able to catch up. I think people will start it, and maybe it'll be a niche thing, but no.
Maybe. Yeah, I would really like to see the math that they do on it because every time I do it, it doesn't add up. So I'd really like to see like Microsoft's math or something, or somebody where like, no, you're looking at it the wrong way. This is how it works. And I'd really like to just see that the numbers for me would make it more real. But I've been talking this whole time, and we still have your stuff to go to.
No, no, no. I mean, I think we hit the blah blah. What track did we talk about first? We talked about the DLC track, and then
Yeah.
we talked about the Xbox Game Pass track and Maneater, and Game Pass good or bad, and that's pretty much it. But I mean, this is about as good as time as any.
Well, what about okay? So in general, real quick at the end,
Yeah,
free
yeah,
to
we
play.
should
You
talk
think it's a
about
good thing or a bad thing?
Game Pass.
No, 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 no. Free to play as a general. Do you think like games are going to move into a free to play model, and we're going to see less of that upfront payment and more trying to kind of the backward hook people in and get them to pay more? Or
So I mean, in microtransactions in general, I still think, summarizing everything, uh, is that microtransactions are still going to be like an Asian thing. I don't think they're going to move too much into the Western arena. I mean, beyond the Fortnites, beyond the Rainbow Six, even Rainbow Six, not that much.
not too much?
Yeah. Now, as far as Game Pass, I think that's definitely going to grow, seismically grow. And gaming in general, I don't think, especially you look at Kickstarters, which is one of the points I made. New indie developers, they're not going to make games with microtransactions because they know people don't like it. You look at I mean, I follow Kickstarter religiously because I'm always looking for games to sort of get in early and back. And yeah, no Kickstarter games, no indie developers. You look at this a lot, the tons of indies on the Switch have microtransactions, let alone DLCs, because people would just want to pay one time and finish it off. Um, that's my quick take. What about you?
Uh, yeah, I think I would say that I I kind of think we're going to see more free to play games. I mean, kind of like I think Genshin Impact. I don't think it's going to set a real trend, but I do think, especially in multiplayer games, there's going to be more of a drive to kind of because in mobile games we have like the whale system, right, where you have the fish and the fish play for free, and then you have the sharks and the sharks buy a little bit, and then you have the whales, and that's really where the big money gets spent. Uh, I think that we are going to see more of that model, and where they're going to release these huge multiplayer games like battle royales and things like that, like Fortnite. And then the idea is they want a big player base. So they're going to offer it for free, get a lot of those free people, and then really kind of feed off of these whales who are buying all the. So I do see that in the multiplayer sphere, but in single player, I do think something like Game Pass is going to become more popular because I don't understand how it's profitable to the publishers, but I mean, it's a great deal for gamers, right?
Sure.
Like if I'm spending less money, that's great for me. So, yeah, I definitely see where that's, it's just for somebody like Microsoft, they can make a lot of money off of these things. For somebody like me, I can save a lot of money. So I definitely think that that's going to be the push in the future. Just don't really understand how that's going, or I don't really understand how that's going to work out for publishers like Square Enix or, Ubisoft, or, I mean, Bethesda's owned by Microsoft now, so they're not in any trouble like that. But yeah, the third, I guess you would call them third parties. I'm kind of wondering what direction they're going to go in. Yeah.
Okay. So Adam, what do you think about what are we going to talk about next week?
I don't know. I picked this one. What, do you have anything you want to talk about?
Next week. Oh God. Now I understand how you feel when I put you on the spot. Let's have a quick look at our list of topics and see if anything strikes a fancy. And these are podcast ideas. Hopefully this is the right one. Oh no, this is totally not the right one. I should look at podcast main topics, the game show topics, game show themes, main podcast topics. Favorite gaming lore? No. Old age gaming, cross-platform play, artistic interpretation. We talked about that. Spoilers is
Ben wants to talk about international politics.
What? No, really?
Could you embellish on that?
Oh, Maggie says claps.
That means a lot of things. Yeah, Maggie said something. Yeah, international politics could mean a lot of things, especially here in Taiwan, where international politics. Yeah.
Um, Jesus, what would be a good topic? I'm actually absolutely at a loss for words. Uh, okay. Do you have any better ideas?
No, I'm just reading this article here written by a developer for Game Pass, and he actually says developers need to look at what does this get for me, and I might be biased, but I think the way business is for Game Pass, it's the first time it's actually what I would consider fair for developers. So maybe developers are, oh, okay, so maybe developers get more money off of Game Pass. It's the publishers that lose their money on it. So maybe
Okay.
that's something that I wasn't considering. That it's actually developers because they get a really tiny cut of it, right? So yeah, maybe it's better for developers and it's worse for publishers. I don't know, but
Okay.
but anyway, yeah, topic wise, yeah, I don't know.
What about what about the strategy, the idea of giving games away for free? Because Epic Store has been doing it. Humble Bundle does it sometimes. Steam's done it occasionally.
Sure.
When we talk about free games or getting games for free, and what is the purpose of giving games away for free? Uh, that might tie into today's topic a little bit as well.
Sure.
And how does it win? Who wins? Who doesn't win? Uh, what's happening? I mean, is Steam gonna jump on the bandwagon? Which I don't think so, but we'll be able to see as well.
Yeah, I wouldn't be. I mean, because shoot, who is it? Humble Bundle does that sometimes, where they offer free games, and I always go like, oh, and I buy them, or I buy them, and then I never play them, but I have them in the future if I ever change my mind.
Yeah, well, maybe we could even expand it to say humble, let's say free games or games on sale. And the philosophy, the motivation when you're getting this stuff and the building up of the backlog, and because I remember buying those 50 game Steam bundles back in the day, and I'm like, oh
Oh,
God.
yeah.
That's a good question. I mean, does the PlayStation ever have those big game bundles?
They don't usually do bundles, but they do, and this is something that's interesting. A lot of PC gamers I see will argue like, oh, hey, you don't on PC it's cheaper. Maybe the console's cheaper, PC's more expensive, but PC you get free online play, but you have to pay for console online play, right?
Yes.
Uh, but the thing is yes, PlayStation Plus, they offer their free games and they don't usually do bundles. But what they do is sometimes if you have the middle-aged gaming backlog builder special, but if they do have, but sometimes they do have what they'll call double dipping, where if the game is whatever the percentage off of the game is if you are subscribed to PS Plus, you'll get that additional off. So if it's 45% off, you'll get 90% off.
Okay.
So they do that, and actually, the extra sales, the extra savings I make off of that, end up being higher than what I pay for PlayStation Plus anyway. So
Then why
actually, my
not?
PlayStation Plus pays for itself for a lot of games I don't actually ever play. But no, they don't offer like a huge bundle where they're like, buy these 10 games for this. No,
I didn't think so.
I think they did once, but I think it was back. I think it was a charity. I think it was like, it wasn't the Japanese earthquake that we had in 2011, but I think it was something like that where they were like, oh, you buy this, you get these games, and then all the money goes to charity. But I think they've only done that maybe once.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool, cool, cool. All right, and then with that, we have got to call it to a close. Thanks everyone for watching and listening, and thanks as always, Ben, for being here to give us our audience feedback.
Yes, we look forward to talking to you on Thursday.
Yes, and we always forget to do this. We'd like to give Adam's friend Alice, I guess is her name.
Alice Shen,
Yes,
yes.
Alice Shen. They have a podcast going terribly. Uh, and she's given us a shout out. So here's your shout out, Alice. Very interesting, very cool. I love their Instagram posts. They're always really done really, really well. So Going and Terribly. You can look at it on your podcast app. You can look at it on Instagram. I'm pretty sure they must have Twitter somewhere. Also
I
check
think
out
so.
Game Papa, which is a local Taiwanese podcast. They listen to us. Sometimes I listen to them on the weekends. It is only in Chinese, so if you're learning Chinese or want to improve your Chinese, check them out as well.
Mandarin Chinese.
Yes, Mandarin Chinese. Yes. Thank you for the emphasis. And with that, don't forget to drop us a message on any social media, Middle Age Gaming 2020. We'd love to hear from you. And Adam?
Yeah, we're looking forward to hearing from everybody. And as you all know, Ben's going to be on the show this Thursday. So
Yes!
please, yes. So please be more interactive and you can come on the show. You know, if you want to have I'm sorry, I can't guarantee you that you're going to have 15 minutes of fame, but I can give you, roughly an hour of a couple people listening to you talk. So,
Sure, why not? Yes.
so yeah,
I will
let
be
us
there
know.
Thursday night, Taiwanese time, Thursday morning, American time to cheer you guys on as you guys do your stuff.
That's right. So yeah, come along and enjoy the show.
Okay, and with that, we'll see you guys on Thursday night. Well, Adam and Ben will see you guys. I will be in the background. And see you guys next week, Tuesday, where we talk about I'm going to use Ben's name. Oh, but you can't scroll up. Oh, yes, you can.
Mag Backlog Builders Special.
Mag Backlog Builders Special. That's going to be the topic name we're going to use.
What is ADD? Oh, ADD. I thought it was ADDI. I'm sorry. It was the font.
All right, guys. See you later.